So I know I've done a MIG welding technique video before with this Harbor Freight weld machine and being able to get the stack of dime looks, but I feel like I left a lot of stuff out. So I want to do another video and go from the beginning to the end and try to cover at least the basics on what you should be doing if you're trying to improve your MIG welding game and get to the next level. Somewhere in this video I'm going to post directions, or post what you need to comment to get some free entries. So we're a couple hours to go on our first video, and we'll pick somebody and give them 5 free entries, and then we'll pick somebody in this video after 24 hours after we post it, and we'll give them 5 free entries. So somewhere in here I'll just stop, I'll give you the words you need to comment that word, and I'll pick somebody in 24 hours. Number one thing you need to do is learn how to clean your material. I don't care if you're welding plate, pipe, whatever you pick. If you're welding it, you need to figure out how to clean it. And what I see a lot of people do, I've got just some 1/4 inch plate. These are like little drops that come off some wheel centers that we did a long time ago. I got a 5-gallon bucket full of these things. But what I see a lot of people do is say they're going to do a T-joint and they're going to weld this here. They'll clean this side, they'll clean that side, and they'll clean their base. They'll stick it together, put it however they want it, and they'll start welding. What they forgot about was the bottom side. If you got mill scale, oil, dirt, grease, anything that will contaminate that weld, if you got it on the bottom side of that, it's going to be drawn into your weld. Because no matter what kind of welding you're doing, you're getting X amount of penetration into that plate, depending on your settings and how you're welding and how everything's going for you at the moment. So say on this 1/4 inch plate we were getting 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 of an inch penetration into the plate. 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 of an inch on the bottom of this is going to be drawn into your weld. So with MIG welding, what you're going to get, if you have something that's going to contaminate it, is you're going to start getting porosity, which is little holes, or it can be really big holes in your welds, and that's not a strong weld. It don't look good, it's not strong, and it's going to fail, it's going to crack, it's going to break, it's just not going to hold. TIG welding is a different animal. You depending on the material and what you're welding with, and gas flow and all these other things that go into TIG welding, you could get porosity, and you can get a whole group of other things. But 9 times out of 10 with MIG welding, you're going to get porosity. I'll cover TIG welding in a whole separate video. So number one, figure out how to clean your metal. If you look at these guys on Instagram that's posting these pictures that look like a robot did it, they probably spent 3 to 4 hours cleaning. They spend an hour cleaning to make this little joint right here. Or you see this pictures that were posted on Facebook of this poor guy that got this lift kit that looked all bubble gummed up. That guy probably didn't spend 2 minutes cleaning that. If he cleaned it at all, he could have possibly just welded right over paint and everything. That number one thing, in my opinion, that's going to set you apart and get you to the next level is how deeply you clean your parts. You can even go as far as getting some acetone or rubbing alcohol and cleaning everything before you weld it, letting it dry, and then welding it. Me and a buddy of mine from New York who did a job down in South Florida in Cape Canaveral, we contracted out for SpaceX doing these launch pads. We did all the stainless pipe on them launch pads. We did 2 launch pads, and we did all the stainless pipe. The QC down there was extremely strict and just retarded on everything. If we touched it, it had to be cleaned with this IP solution. So the outside of the pipe, the inside of the pipe, our tungsten, before we could put it in our TIG rigs, had to be cleaned with that IP solution. Our TIG wire had to be cleaned with it. Our TIG wire went into a bag. Once we got done cleaning it and we took it back out, we cleaned it again. If your gloves got contaminated, anything that was not 100% pure, it had to be just tossed and started over. If they thought the pipe wasn't 100% cleaned, it got tossed and started over. But probably some of the best welds I ever put down in my career was down there, and I honestly believe it's because we cleaned stuff so stupid much that there was nothing, no impurities in our welds, and they come out just amazing. I've done a lot of really good welds over the years, but hands down probably some of the best ones was down there. That, we did a bunch of heavy wall stainless, so it'll take a lot of heat, and you kind of get some nice looking welds on that. But besides that, the cleaning definitely helped out. Once you figure out how to clean your material, whether it's pipe, plate, or whatever you're cleaning. The next thing you need to practice on is learning your machine. So the machine we're using is that Harbor Freight titanium MIG 170. Oh, if you've watched this far, just go comment the word welding, and then I'll enter everybody, throw everybody's name in a hat, and we'll pick somebody. But it's a titanium 170 or MIG, titanium MIG 170 is the machine that I've got. We'll be running around 18 to 19 volts and around 180 to 190 on the wire speed. But what you need to understand is this 18 volts that I'm running on a miller could be 20 volts, could be 10 volts, could be 15 volts. I've got no way of knowing. All I do know is I can watch my puddle and tell if I'm too hot, too cold, and what I need to do to get the puddle the way I need to get it, to get the outcome that I'm looking for. So learn your machine and learn what you need to do for your wire speed, and how fast you as a person can move that MIG gun. If you can't, it's fixing to storm out there, so we may not even finish this video. But anyways, if you as a person move real slow with your MIG gun, you may not want a ton of wire speed because it's just not going to work out for the way you weld. You may not want a ton of heat because you move so slow that you can't handle running a lot of heat. So figure out what you're doing with your machine as far as your settings for your personal preference. Piss on what everybody else does. Learn what you need to learn. So don't go watch some video and this guy says, oh, you've got to run 22 volts at 300 inch per minute wire speed. Piss on that guy. That may work for him, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but what works for him ain't gonna work for you. And I learned that a long time ago welding pipe. I worked with a lot of old timers, and probably at least 50 to 60% of them when I was first starting out used to tell me the same thing. Piss on that other guy over there that's laying down nice welds. He can tell you he's doing this, this, and that, and there's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of his technique and then somebody else helping you and pulling a little bit of their technique, molding it together and making your own technique. But you're not going to be able to copycat one person and get the identical result as they can. So piss on anybody telling you have to do this or have to do that. Figure out what works for you. Once you figure out how to clean, once you figure out your machine, you just need a lot of hood time. You need to be able to determine what your actual puddle is when you're welding. Actually look at it. You need to have enough hood time to know what that puddle looks like, and then being able to determine what that puddle is going to do before it does it. So one of the biggest things between this little $400 or $500 Harbor Freight machine and a $6,000 miller is the inverter board that's inside of it. Obviously this can't have the same inverter board. There's no way. Whatever little computer stuff's in there, it's not going to have the same bull crap, and it's not going to be as consistent. So if you're really good at watching it and we can get some really good arc shots, I know for a fact this machine's going to start fluctuating. The volts are going to fluctuate a little bit, the wire speed's going to fluctuate. It's just not going to be super 100% consistent. Whereas a miller, Lincoln, a ESAB, something with a little bit more high dollar internals, is probably going to be a little bit more consistent across the board. And that's just the nature of the game. You're not going to get that consistency out of this $400 machine that the $4,000 miller is going to give you. But what you can do is you can get good enough to determine that the puddle looks like it's about to do this, or I need to slow down just a little bit because I'm outrunning my puddle, or I'm going too slow because my wire speed picked up just a hair and I need to move a little faster. Now it's physically impossible for the human eye to be able to see this and let your hand react fast enough to get 100% consistency. So don't think you're going to get this perfect weld every time out of these cheaper machines. We'll go over my weld when I'm done, and I can probably tell you every little thing that happened that gets the inconsistency. And it could very well possibly just be something on my part, as far as my hand didn't move the way I wanted it to move at the moment, or my elbow kind of got locked up and I wasn't able to twist. There's also a ton of techniques you can do. This stack of dime look deal that everybody loves is not necessarily the strongest weld you can do. A nice hot flat little bead is probably one of the strongest welds you can do, just because you can get a lot of cold lap if you're not really good at doing the technique. So you could tie this plate to this plate on the outside where it looked really good, but you have a major void where they connect, and it's just all cold lap. Nothing's melted in, there's no heat there, and that's not a strong weld. It's going to break, it's going to crack, it's going to break it at the top, at the bottom. It's not going to hold. So it's not necessarily the strongest weld you can do, but when it comes to selling a product, people go off of looks, and 9 times out of 10 the stack of dime look is going to sell over just a little flat bead. It's definitely going to sell faster than somebody that's going to leave BBs, and don't get me, and MIG welding, sometimes you're going to get little spots, and sometimes you're going to miss this little BB on the back side of a plate or something that you didn't know was there. You're not going to be perfect 100% of the time, but what it comes down to is looks sell products, and people love that stack of dime looks. So once you get all that figured out, it's just hood time. You need to put your hood on, and you just need to practice as much as you can and as much as you can afford to practice. Gas is expensive, this MIG wire is expensive. Don't use flux core if you're trying this MIG stuff. You definitely need to get some gas. Make sure you're running 75-25. The 100% argon and all this other stuff will work, but my personal opinion is you don't get as good a weld as you would with the 75-25. But once again, learn what is best for you. Try it all. 100% argon, you might be able to take that and take your machine you got and lay down the best looking welds that the world's ever seen. But me personally, with this machine and this wire that I'm using, and I'm using Hobart 030 wire, I think. I'm pretty sure it's 30 wire or 030 wire. It welds the best with 75-25. So once you get a lot of hood time down, it's just always try to do better. Always push yourself to be better. These people you see posting on Instagram that's got these welds that look like machines done them, I guarantee you, if you've seen the whole part that they were doing, that you can nitpick imperfections out in that part. I'm 90% sure, 99% sure, that if you look close enough at the whole part that they're building, you'll see inconsistencies. Just for the fact that I've seen a lot of these people up close, I've seen a lot of these builds, I've seen a lot of these parts up close, and they're taking a picture that wide, but what you don't see is on the back side of that part, they had 3 times that length, all jacked up and all inconsistent. And there's a few of them on there that will post their inconsistencies just for people to see, but not many of them. Most of them, they just want to post what they know what people want to see, and that's what looks the best. So don't get down, just keep pushing to do better. And even myself, I kind of got out of the rhythm of doing a ton of welding lately, but I'm kind of getting back into it. We're doing a lot of these custom fab jobs, so I'm really pushing myself to get better and better. And if you can get really good with a cheap machine, you'll be really good with a good machine. So we got a Miller that we're going to get coming on the way, just because my personal opinion, Miller is one of the best MIG weld machines you can get. But if I keep pushing myself and getting better with this cheap machine, when the Miller comes in, it's going to be like floating on a cloud. So we've got a ton of rain and wind just blowed up, so we're going to try to knock this welding out real fast, and hopefully we can get done before power goes out. So let's jump over here and get these arc shots, and then we'll stop and take a quick look at the weld. So I didn't get any welding done last night. We had that crazy bad storm blow in. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it on the camera, but just about at the time that I decided to turn the camera off, it started lightning real bad, started thundering, the wind picked up, it started raining. So I just flipped all the breakers off in the shop and I ran inside. So we're going to try to get the welding done this morning. I went and got this welding lens out of my old toolbox out behind the shop. We're going to tack the plate together this morning, and then hopefully we can set everything up so we can get some pretty good arc shots, and then maybe you'll kind of be able to see exactly what I'm doing and what's going on with the puddle when I do it. So we'll set this up, and then we'll get this tacked together and we'll start welding. So I don't know how good the arc shots are actually going to come out on the video, but if they come out pretty decent, you'll be able to tell that when I made my loop and I came back up, from time to time, right there would have been one, right there would have been one, that was probably another one, and then I think I had one at the end. But when I came up and I started to come back up, the arc, it would lose the arc, the wire would keep feeding, and by the time I'd got the gun up to the top plate, it would start back, but the wire wasn't melting at that point, so it would hit the wire and bounce back, and you'd get a little pop every time. And that's just what you're going to get with these cheaper machines. You're not going to get a super 100% consistent flow with them. Even right now, that if you could look and tell good enough, you can see that it's kind of running a little cold, but I'm running about 18.6 volts, and that's exactly where I had it at the last time I did 1/4 inch plate. But that's another thing you'll run into on these cheap machines. Today, 18 volts or 18.6 is kind of a little cold. I may be able to run 19 or maybe even 20, maybe even 20 and a half. But tomorrow I could turn this machine off, go inside, come out here tomorrow, and these 18 volts might be way hotter than what it is today. It might flow perfect at 18.6 volts tomorrow. That's another thing you're going to get with these cheaper machines. It's just what it is. The computer boards and the inverters and stuff inside of them are just not as high quality as what you'll get with a Miller, a Lincoln, a ESAB, or even a higher priced Everlast. It's just not. They're not going to put a $4,000 computer board inside of a $400 Harbor Freight machine. That's just what it is. But as you can see, this is not perfect. I was really trying to keep the gun out of the way so maybe we could catch as much as we could with the GoPro. So I didn't have the best angle, but as you can see, if you practice enough and you kind of understand your machine, you can eventually start laying down some pretty nice beads. So you can see there's tons of mess ups. There's a mess up here, there's a mess up there, that's a little off, that's a little off. Those three are pretty close to being pretty consistent, but then we had another couple mess ups here. Those three are almost consistent, but you can see these two start riding up higher. Then I try to get back down lower, and then we got a mess up, and then we've got maybe even four. These four here are pretty consistent, but it's just a practice thing. Would have done a little better if I wouldn't have been worrying about the GoPro and would have had a little bit better angle on the gun, but it just is what it is. So as you can tell, it's not a perfect weld, but if you take your time, you learn your machine, and you just practice enough, you can take these cheaper machines and get some pretty decent looking welds. If I'd have had about another, if I'd have went from 18.6 to around 19 and a half or maybe 20 volts, it would have laid a lot flatter, it would have looked a lot better, and it would have bit in a little better. But just for some practice and just trying to show people of what you can get if you practice enough with these cheaper machines, it came out pretty decent. I kind of went over the mess ups on there and kind of what caused the mess ups. I'm hoping we get some pretty decent arc shots with the footage, but we're gonna go inside and try to edit this video and see what we did get. If not, it's really not that important. It's really gonna be a hood game for you. You need to put your hood on, and you just need to put your head down and weld as much as you can. Just remember, you got to start with the basic stuff. You got to start with learning how to clean your material. Then you need to learn how to adjust your machine, and then you need to learn your machine in general and what works for you. Piss on what works for everybody else. There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of what this guy does and a little bit of what that guy does and kind of combine it together and say, look, this is my style. But don't try to completely copy somebody else, especially when it comes to machine settings, because I don't care. Even with the I've worked at a bunch of fab shops over the years, and some of the highest dollar equipment that you could possibly buy, and same machines, I could be welding at 250 amps on some heavy wall carbon, and my homeboy Roberto over here was welding at, I think, like 220. So even with these high dollar machines, it's personal preference. I was probably moving a little slower than what Roberto was, or maybe I was moving a little faster, but for whatever reason, my machine was always set a little hotter. and it's just how it is. That's what you're going to get. Everybody's going to move at a different speed. So piss on everybody else, learn what works for you. And it's a rough game to ask for help on Facebook. It really is. A lot of people want to talk trash to everybody, but honestly, if you find some good people that are good at what they do, they don't mind helping people out. It's the people that are not really that great, and the people that don't want to post pictures and videos of their welds, that always talk trash. If they're not willing to show you what they do, or they're not willing to help you, odds is they're not that great. They can sit there and talk a big game all they want all day long, but I would about put money on 80% of the people that's talking trash to other people trying to improve their welds or their product or their quality, more than likely have really poor quality welds themselves. So keep that in mind and just piss on everybody else and just practice. So I've got a bunch of parts to knock out today, so I'm gonna try to run in and get this video edited. Make sure you comment. I think I went with the word welding. Whatever word I went with, make sure you comment that, and I'll pick somebody 24 hours, give them some free entries. And I think we're around 2 to 3 weeks left on the giveaway, so good luck.